So let's make sure we've got our slides here moving. Let's see, Lori, if they're going to be nice to me. Oh, here we are. Look, you can see us. All right, so not for real, but you can see pictures of us. We have, as I mentioned, Lori Hochman from Auctria joining us today. And I've already told you a little bit about me, so I'd love, Lori, if you'd say hello and maybe just give a little bit of an overview about you. And then we'll go in and talk a little bit more about Auctria in a little bit.
Awesome. Thank you, Timi. I appreciate you so much for sharing this webinar stage with us. We've been promoting this webinar on the Auctria side as well, because I know that there's a lot of people that use Auctria that also use Little Green Light. So I'm so glad we were able to pair this together. My name is Lori. I am the Director of Growth and Strategy here over at Auctria. Auctria is a platform that is used for event fundraising, whether it be your first donation, the last receipt, all the activity, bidding, auction, raffles, in between golf tournaments, pickleball tournaments, you name it. If there's an event attached to it, you can run it on the Auctria platform. Auctria has been around since 2011. I started using Auctria myself in 2012, started working here a couple of years later. My son was in 2nd grade and he's getting ready to go into his senior year of college. So I've been hanging out with Auctria for a long time. I volunteer in my own community and I'm so happy to share my information with you guys today. And I appreciate each and every one of you for sharing your day with us.
That was so wonderful. Thank you, Lori. And very funny because you did a nice little introduction about Auctria, which I so appreciated. I love knowing a little bit about Auctria, what it does, and I love hearing about those pickleball tournaments. I got to say, every time I think I want to do one of those. But we did have a question from Esther asking what Little Green Light is, and so of course my assumption is that many of you that are joining us here today are familiar with Little Green Light, but you may not be, and that's okay. I'd be happy to share a little bit about what Little Green Light is, and I'll do that in just a sec for you, Esther. But let's talk first a little bit about kind of what we're hoping to accomplish during today's session. And then I'd love to hear from all of you as we're talking about this, what your familiarity is or your usage of Little Green Light and Auctria at this point is. So I have a little poll for you that I'm going to pop up in just a sec to ask you that. But let me just first say that really the purpose of today's webinar is to really help you to understand how it is that you can use this all important data that you're collecting via Auctria about your donors and your sponsors and your attendees, and capture that and utilize it in your Little Green Light system so that you can better steward and cultivate those relationships and hopefully develop those event attendees into hopefully longtime supporters for your organization. So for those of you that are not familiar with Little Green Light, what we are is a cloud-based donor management and constituent relationship management platform. And what we do is we help nonprofit organizations keep better track of all of the people that are important to their organization, whether those people be donors or event attendees, members, volunteers, really the whole gamut of everybody that's important to your organization can be maintained in Little Green Light's database. But what we also do is help provide you with tools to help make managing those relationships easier and ultimately leading to more and more support for your organization, hopefully in a philanthropic way. So that's a little bit about what Little Green Light does, Esther. Hopefully that helps. Now, just before we dive in and talk a little bit more, let me go ahead and launch this poll because we'd love to hear about your use of either Auctria or Little Green Light. So what we'd like to know is, are you using both Auctria and Little Green Light right now at your organization, just Auctria or just LGL? And of course, I didn't have an option for neither. And if you're at neither, that's okay too. We're hoping by the end we'll be able to give you some information about one, why it's important to utilize a platform like Auctria to help you better manage information about your actual events, and then why it might be helpful for you to then maintain that information into Little Green Light. So we'll be talking about that as we go through. But Lori, anything you want to say as we're waiting for a few more people to finish up their poll?
No, I'm excited to see what everybody is going to say. You know, Timi, we should have written down our secret answers to see what we think was going to happen on the poll and match them up afterwards. I'm curious because both of us were promoting this webinar and we both want to bring each other's products to each other's audiences because we both feel like the organizations that are homegrown within our platforms are somebody that can benefit from the other one. So I'll be interested to see where that is at this moment and hopefully where that is long-term. And this is a long-term relationship. We've been working with you guys for quite some time, right, Timi?
Absolutely. And boy, do the poll results shed some light on this exact topic. So this is great. So 80% of you, by the way, 83% voted. Thank you very much. 80% of you that voted said you're using both Auctria and Little Green Light. So that's amazing. We're really excited to be able to share kind of the details of this collaboration that we've been working on for the past several months now to help make the transition of information from Auctria to Little Green Light simpler. But I see that we definitely have some folks here also that are using Auctria but are not familiar or using Little Green Light yet. And then the same that using Little Green Light but not yet Auctria. So about that same amount. So we hope that you come away with a good understanding about what both of our systems do and how they ultimately can benefit your organization, especially for those organizations that are doing event work and want to capitalize on that event work after the event ends. And so that's what this is all about. And Lori is absolutely right. This is really a wonderful opportunity for us to be able to share products with our customers that we really feel like will be beneficial to your organization and the work you do. We are very particular here at Little Green Light about who it is we choose to partner with and especially build integrations with or for. And that's because we really want to make sure that the program or product really aligns with LGL's philosophy of really providing affordable, intuitive, easy to use software for small and mid-sized and growing nonprofits. And I truly believe that Auctria and LGL are a great fit. And so we're super glad you're here so we can share more about that with you.
Absolutely. And our teams have worked together behind the scenes to make this as seamless as possible for you also so that you guys can utilize that data in an effective way.
Absolutely. Excellent. All right. So let's go ahead and move on and just talk a little bit about some of the objectives. So as we stated, we're really going to hope that you'll come away with understanding about why it's important to maintain information about the events that you're running in Auctria in your CRM, specifically in Little Green Light. We'll actually share the two, what we feel like are the two most important Auctria reports that you can generate for integration into Little Green Light, specifically for donor stewardship purposes. And we'll talk about what that donor stewardship piece looks like. And we'll talk a little bit about how you actually would go ahead and enable the integration with Auctria in your LGL account, what it looks like, how it works. And then we'll talk a little bit about how you can use some of this data to tailor some of your communications with your event attendees after the event to help do some stewardship. So that's kind of our objectives and what we hope you'll learn as we get through today. So Laura, you talked a little bit about Auctria, but would you like to share a little bit more about kind of your philosophy around why fundraising events can be really beneficial for nonprofits?
Sure. And if anybody's been hanging around me for any amount of time, you've heard me say this not once, but 5,000 times. The purpose of your event is two-pronged. One, to raise money, and the second one is to raise awareness. You want to raise money, whether it be through event revenue or sponsorships or activating people in the room for silent auction or a raffle ticket, that sort of stuff. But also it's to raise awareness for your organization, and you can do that in the room, activating people, telling people from the stage what's going on, videos, impact videos, but also on your event website. You can brand that website, use your images, your video to sell your story. So this is why we partner with people like Timi, because we want to bring you the entire holistic activities for your event. So your event fundraiser is going to inspire people. It's going to be the trigger. It's going to be the butane for your butane lighter. You know, this is what's going to initiate the conversations or continue to raise the bar on your conversations that you're having with your donors. And you've got that energy of the event fundraiser, but then you have all year long that you need to steward them. And that's why everything works together so nicely. If we flip to the next page, you can see we've got the green and the yellow together, where it's just a zing, you know, what do they call it?
Yin and a yang.
Yes, a yin and a yang. Why was I saying zing and zang? I don't know.
I know exactly where you were going with that.
Thank you. But, you know, that all works together so that you can have it longitudinally, where you're working with your donors and being able to engage them, not just at that moment, but throughout the year and throughout the years and decades after.
Yeah. And you know, it's funny, I for a long time have worked with nonprofits, for nonprofits, prior to coming to Little Green Light. That was my primary role as a advancement director. And you know, events were important to our overall fundraising strategy, but we know how time consuming and how much life we take on, right? It's a lot of work, right?
It is.
And how important it is, one, not only to have a really good tool like Auctria to help automate some of those really tedious or difficult tasks, and kind of manage all the information that, you know, is important as it relates to running a successful event, but then also capitalizing on that one-time event by, you know, utilizing the data to really grow your donor base. You know, I hear often from our customers, they'll say, well, I don't know who my donors are, or I don't know who to begin reaching out to ask to support our organization. Maybe they're a new organization. They just don't really know, you know, kind of who are supporting them. And they sometimes forget to think about these events that they've been running and how those people can be future supporters in a philanthropic way beyond an event scenario. And so this is why it's a good tie-in to kind of be thinking about how your event management software, and Auctria in particular, is a really awesome tool to help you manage all of the transactional related data that comes with managing an event, and there's so much of it. And how Little Green Light can then take that data and put it into a framework that helps you to build deeper and stronger relationships with those people afterwards. So it's really important, if you're going to spend all this time and energy on creating and offering events, that you have a good strategic plan to think about how it is that you can use that data after the event ends. And that's why we put this slide together, because we kind of wanted to talk about some of the many benefits that your organization can have when you decide to utilize the information that you're getting from your event and putting it into Little Green Light or your donor management system. First and foremost, you know, instead of having separate information in different places, you're able to consolidate it all into one system. So you'll know who attended each event, and you'll know how much they spent at that event, how many tickets they purchased. You'll be able to see if they came to that event year over year. Maybe they were a first timer, or they initially came last year and they and their spouse came, but the next year they bought a whole table for their group of friends. That's information that makes a lot of sense for you to be able to capture in your event software, but then bring over into your CRM so that you can start to see opportunities and where you can continue to grow relationships with that donor and see potential. And that's where you can kind of see those trends and opportunities that we're talking about. When it comes to using a donor management system like Little Green Light, one of the things that's really cool is that it's also a CRM. So it's not just a database where you're keeping track of somebody's name, their address, and email, but it's also an opportunity for you to be able to keep track of these relationship building efforts that you're doing over time with people. So, if you're having phone calls or meetings or sending out emails or mailings, you can keep track of that in their record, and that just becomes part of your institutional memory, really, of your interaction with this constituent over time. Of course, we want to make sure that you're really stewarding and thanking those donors and attendees after they've attended your event, and a CRM like Little Green Light can really be beneficial in helping you to do that. And then, of course, we're going to always encourage you to not just thinking about them as having been an attendee at one event, but really someone who has indicated some interest and willingness to maybe learn a little bit more about what's going on with your organization. So including them in your ongoing communications, which generally are managed outside of Auctria and inside a CRM tool like Little Green Light.
Absolutely. And using tools like this, Timi, is just so important, because we know that staff is turned over or volunteers turn over, and to have that in a hub that you can go to and look back for years and years and years to see what happened, or thinking into the future, what's going to happen in the future. It's just invaluable.
It is invaluable, and it's true. I've come into many of situations where an organization has been around for years and has been doing lots of great work, but there's been either a lot of staff or volunteer turnover that's managed different events. And each time they start the new event, they start from scratch. They have to figure out who are they going to ask to sponsor, who's on their invitation list. And if they were able to maintain information in a centralized system and they could see historical data, they wouldn't have to recreate the wheel each time. They could utilize that information going forward and build on it rather than starting from scratch each time. So that's definitely a benefit of using a tool like a Little Green Light to help you with that.
For sure.
Yeah. All right, so let's talk a little bit about events. I love this part of the presentation because, Lori, I love hearing about the different kinds of things Auctria helps nonprofits with. So tell us a little bit about kind of the reason behind fundraising events and what kinds of things you can expect to do as it relates to that.
Sure. So these pictures may look a little familiar in that kind of what I talked to about before. You want to raise money, you want to raise awareness, and then of course you want to thank the donors afterwards. So your event fundraiser can be any place that a couple people gather or hundreds and hundreds of people gather. Any of those events are opportunities for filling the seats, filling the sponsors, paddle raise, donation drives. In the first image there on the far left, this was the Boys and Girls Club of Manhattan. They did a Kentucky Derby theme, and they had these little horses that ran across the screen. They had 10 heats of 10 horses. They sold them in advance. It was a gamification. They sold all 10 for all 10 heats, except for the very last heat, and then they sold off that last horse for the very last heat as part of their live auction. So they had a lot of energy throughout. It was a lot of building up of the energy. They you can kind of see in the back, somebody was dressed, a lot of people were dressed with the little hats from, they would wear in Kentucky Derby. It was fun. People that are having fun are going to open their hearts and they're going to open their wallets. So you can raise money at your event. First Tee is the next one here. This is, I'm telling you all the time, tell your story, tell your story, tell your story. On the first tee, they do a great job of putting images and videos of where those dollars are going to go. This happened to be the first tee of Jersey Shore. They put up a video of their event the last year, so the people know what to expect for their next event. And First Tee does an amazing job selling anything that isn't locked down as a sponsorship: a cigar room, a putting green, a bar, your coat room, the valet, the front row parking seat, the back row parking seat. Let me tell you, if it were up to my husband, he would buy the back row of the table so he can get the easy out. Anything that isn't pinned down, you sell it as a VIP. And then moving over, this was Habitat for Humanity of Wacom Valley, a county rather, Building Dreams. They've themed it, they've branded it. Their event website that they built on Auctria, you couldn't even tell the difference that you were flipping over to an event website. They branded it with the same colors, the same images, the same fonts for the event website as they did their main website. And then, of course, after the event ends, you have an amazing opportunity to thank donors. They've come, they've spent, they've loved, and utilizing the data and then swapping that over into LGL gives you an amazing opportunity to thank the donors. I think Roger Craver had a quote, if I recall correctly, Timi. Is that correct?
Yeah, but I just wanted to say before we head there, because I love this slide. I love a lot of what you said here. And what it made me realize was, using a tool like Auctria, as I said before, events take a lot of
Did I lose you, Timi?
work and time and energy. And what I really love about Auctria is that you have built, oh, I don't know. Am I gone?
I hear you now. I hear you now.
Can you hear me?
Yes, it might have been me. Sorry.
Oh, good. I'm so sorry about that. Well, that's okay. I was going to say, one of the things that I really love about Auctria is that it really allows organizations to really professionalize their events, because you've built in so many tools. And we can see examples of this, and that you have a level of expertise, I think, to help make event planning and management simpler. And, as you're talking about the first slide of raising money, but you pointed out that, yes, it's about raising money, but it's also providing an experience for your attendees, right? These people are having fun. I mean, look at that guy. He's having a great time. I love that whole heat thing with the horse. Like, what a cool idea. And I'm assuming that's something that Auctria has helped to make possible.
So they used, and for the actual horses, we have a couple things. There's like wheel spinners, and it's in the wheel spinner world, which isn't on Auctria, but they sold all the tickets on Auctria and they were able to track everything.
That's so cool. Yeah, and I do love that, you have the platform that allows people to be able to brand their event page, along with their, with their branding, with their organization's branding, because I think that is also really key, and I think goes to that professionalism. So loved all of this about that. But yes, you were talking about Roger Craven, and he does have a very interesting quote that I really love, which it's a good reminder to all of us, because I think we understand the importance of thanking people who attend our events. But what I liked about this was that he found that donors who were thanked just one more time beyond their counterparts were 40% more likely to give to your organization again. So that kind of goes to what Lori was saying was, yes, we want to make sure that after the event you've thanked them, but you want to go beyond just that one-time thank, and you actually want to think about how it is you can store that relationship. And that's where LGL really can come into play. So post-event, Lori, you've talked a little bit about this. Do you want to share some of your thoughts?
Sure, it is amazing. One more time, 40%. That's a gigantic jump, Timi.
It is.
It is. So after the event, you want to continue to spark interest. You absolutely have to follow up immediately after the event. People want to know, how much did you raise? Did you meet your goal? Where are those dollars going to go? So your post-event is just as critical. And while you're planning all your stuff in advance, go ahead and plan out your post-event tasks and emails so that you can get all that organized. Within the Auctria system, all that transactional stuff happens really easily. Click of a button, some of it's automatic. If it's an online auction, it pulls it all together for you. And then the bidders and the donors are absolutely the heroes. Did you want to talk about that, or shall I?
No, you go right ahead.
So the donor is the hero. I know you've heard this before, but let me tell you, you guys are heroes also. You have capes on your backs because you've done the work to get the donors to know about your cause and to appreciate it. So you want to provide a status updates at regular intervals. And I love an image and I love a video. And you may be cringing and putting your hand on your forehead right now, but believe me, grab snapshots at the event, grab it of the hallways that are filled with people in your farm, or filling your tables, or the food banks that are full now because of it. And any little inkling, any little snapshot into where those dollars are going is amazing. You're there, you're living it every single day, 5 days a week. Your donors aren't necessarily. So that's an opportunity for you to give them a little inkling, a little view through that window. The donor is the hero. Focus on the donor and appreciate them at every opportunity. The donor is doing the action. So use your communication channels to follow up immediately after, continue to spark the interest in status updates, and not just once, regular intervals. Hey, we made this much money. For the first month, we did this. For the second month, we did that. Regularly interact and talk to your donors, because you want to tell, and then ask. Tell, and then ask. You need to have permission for that next ask by telling prior to that.
Yeah, absolutely. And we talk a lot about that here at Little Green Light too. And we actually wrote a blog post not too long ago interviewing Sandy Reese from Get Fully Funded, who works with is a great fundraising consultant and works with a lot of small and growing nonprofits as well. And she has some really great insights in terms of really developing a stewardship plan that allows you to give information and thanks to donors, so you can lead up to a point where you've earned the right to ask. And so some great examples from her. So you can check that out on our blog post too, if you'd like, later on. But one of the things that I liked about your reminder about status updates and sending images, and we all know we're all taking pictures, we all have our cameras on our phones, so easy these days to do that. But really what you're doing is you're helping kind of to create a little FOMO, the fear of missing out on the people who, went last year and, are going to want to go next year, or didn't go last year and want to come. And so those are all things that you can really easily accomplish, while taking some fun pictures too. So another quick quote here, just in case you needed a reminder, which I'm sure many of you don't, but ultimately, we feel that events really should be part of a fundraising continuum, that it shouldn't just be a one-shot deal. We've kind of been talking about this already, right? That really the purpose of them, yes, is raising funds for your organization, but it should really exist within this context of building relationships with those folks. So kind of always thinking about, what's next? What am I going to do from here? And Lori, I think you talked so well about that in terms of the thinking of the kind of the plan for follow-up even before the event has happened, because it doesn't end with the night, and tallying up your results and how much you brought in on your bids. It is really about developing these long-term relationships so that these people will become supporters for life.
Absolutely. And if Claire Axelrad, the matriarch of philanthropy, said it, then it must be true.
Indeed. So we're going to actually, now we've kind of given you a whole lot of things to think about in terms of, why it's really important to keep information and utilize that information successfully from your events. Now we're going to talk a little bit about those two reports that I said are super important. to run from Auctria to get into your little green light database. So do you want to talk a little bit about these two and how they came about, Lori? And we can talk more about kind of this, why they are helpful for stewardship.
Sure. And I want to give a shout out to both of our development teams for making this happen. They worked very, very closely together, a lot of iterations back and forth to get the right information out of Auctria in a format that made sense for Little Green Light. With that, it ended up into two Auctria reports that you can run. One is the transaction report, and one is the transaction export, and the other one is the account export. Obviously, you can read off here, but the transaction report gives you a deep dive on every bid, sale, donation. Knowing which items your donors were passionate about helps to tailor your future communications. And then the account export gives you a higher level summary of your donors' contributions.
Yeah, absolutely. And when it comes to making decisions about what data gets imported into your little green light account, this slide helps to kind of really help you think that through. What we feel like is important is the information that's going to help you to be able to build on information that you can then use to further the relationship and hopefully develop a second gift. So obviously contact information is important. Information about the event they attended, if they have different ticket levels, if they had a sponsorship, those are things that you definitely want to know. You'd also want to be able to keep track of the purchases that they made and the donations that they provided. Maybe they provided some in-kind donations to help make your event a success. Those are all really useful types of data to bring into Little Green Light, and what is really represented very well in the transaction export that Lori was just talking about that comes from Auctria. Now, the transactional type of information that Auctria maintains around bidding history or table seating and ticket numbers and meal choices and all of that, that does not need to come into your Little Green Light account. No reason to clog up your information in your CRM with that transactional type data. So that isn't information that we pull over into the transaction report that Lori talked about, that our dev team worked really hard on. So those are the kinds of things. Ultimately, the key is to just really be thoughtful about what data you're going to want to be able to use to help kind of develop those trends and opportunities that we talked about. If it's just one-time transactional related info, then we would say, you know what, keep it out. Less mess is better, less clutter is better. But where you can really utilize information to help move people potentially to a higher level, their past giving related to that event can be really, really beneficial. Awesome. Lori, anything you want to say about that?
Yeah, two things I wanted to say about that. And these are the questions that come up all the time. And I'm surprised they're not in the chat yet. People ask us, does this automatically feed by itself all the time? Is it constantly feeding? And the answer is no. And it's because that's on purpose. You want to wait for the dust to settle. You want to have your final numbers and then pull in your clean data, just like Timi was talking about.
Absolutely, yes. And we'll talk about the specifics about how this data does get from this transaction report into Little Green Light. But yes, it is something that we highly recommend that you do after the event has ended and you've closed out all of your transactional information in Auctria.
Right. So, and the rest of the stuff that she's talking about here, bidding history, table seating, it never goes away. It always stays in Auctria. So you can always retrieve that information when you need to, when you really want to take a deeper dive to who sat with who and things like that. You don't need it in LGL. It will always remain in Auctria. And even if your plan expires from a diamond or an emerald, it'll revert down to an explorer, but your data is always there. We never hold any of your data hostage.
Awesome. Yeah, that's great to know. And I know you've talked a little bit about those different levels of service that you offer. So maybe we can talk a little bit more about that at the end in case people have questions and want to know about that.
Sure.
But yeah, so Laura, you want to talk a little bit about this screen?
So just like Timmy had mentioned, there's transaction and an export as well as an account export. This page was built specifically for those that are using little green light. And you click the button that says transaction report and it downloads. You click the account export one and the same thing happens. And these were built in conjunction with the advice from the LGL team. So you go into your export page and you'll see an LGL export page after that. And it's really that simple.
Awesome. Yeah, we love simplicity here, so that is great. We love that it's clearly defined as a little green light export, so people are not going to have to hunt and peck through their account to find these reports. It's very clearly delineated, which is wonderful. When it comes to getting this information into little green light, we'll hop over to the next screen and I'll share what that looks like. But I do want to just mention these exports come in a spreadsheet format. That's the format that you need in order to get the information into little green light. And we've simplified getting this specific import data into little green light with a special tool that I'll tell you about in just a minute. But when it comes to importing the data, we would definitely recommend the transaction export be the one that you choose to bring into little green light. The account export is a great one for you to keep and review and analyze. It isn't something that you necessarily need to bring into little green light because little green light is going to actually do totals per donor for you automatically from the details in the transaction export. So the account export is really a great one to download and keep with your event files, maybe just in general, just so that you can quickly review that one row per participant and the total of all of their different donations. The transaction report will give you the detail of each specific transaction, and that's what we want to bring into little green light, and then little green light will total that information for you automatically. So no need to bring in both to LGL, just the transaction report.
Okay. Love when a plan comes together, Timi.
I know, huh? It's so cool. So let's talk a little bit about how easy it is now that we know where the reports are in Auctria, where they go in little green light. So it basically is 2 steps. The first step is only taken once. So if you already are using little green light and have already set up this Auctria integration, you have enabled it and you don't need to do it the next time you bring in new data. But the first thing that you want to do if you've never set up the integration between LGL and Auctria is to log into your little green light account, head over into the settings area, and you'll see an integration settings option in the drop-down menu or in the sub-navigation bar. And you will see under specialty services, we have Auctria. So if you click on that option, you'll see that there's this checkbox here to turn on the Auctria integration. It's that simple. What this does is, just as this text tells you, it basically adds a pre-built template to the Flex importer. That's the tool that we here at Little Green Light provide our customers to allow them to import all kinds of information into Little Green Light from spreadsheet format. What makes this pre-built template really awesome is that it is all set for you to go with a single click of a button. You don't need to do any mapping of that spreadsheet in order to get the information into Little Green Light where you want it. It's all pre-built for you in that template. So if you click on this Enable Auctria Integration button, then your next step is to head over into the Flex Importer area, where you'll then be able to upload that transaction report. And when you do that, you'll see that you'll have an option to pull a template from a list of possible templates. The Auctria transaction template is the one that we will use. And so as you can see here in our import screen, if you're familiar with the Flex Importer, these are the field names in your spreadsheet, and then these are the field names that exist in Little Green Light. And if you aren't using a pre-built template like this one, you'd actually go in and manually set all of these mappings, but we've done that for you in this pre-built template. So if you want a more detailed step-by-step process of importing information from Auctria, we do have a great how-to article in our knowledge base, and you can go through that step by step. And of course, our support team is always available by email to answer any questions you have. One of the great things about our support team here at Little Green Light is that we do have the capability to actually log into your account and see what it is you're working on. So if you're in the Flex Importer screen and you're stuck, you're not sure which next step to take, we actually can log in and see what you're working on and help troubleshoot. So it's definitely a great resource, and one that we encourage you always take advantage of, because it's included with the cost of your Little Green Light account. There's no extra charges for our support. So that's a little bit about how you import, well, one, how you set up the integration, and then two, how you import in that transaction export with that pre-built template. And that's it.
Timi, I think it takes longer for us to explain it off a slide than it actually does to export and import in real life.
Well, that is true. That is true. Sometimes, you know, I'm a little wordy. Is that what you're saying, Lori?
No, I'm just saying, you know, you want to put up the details, we go through it, you know, but yeah, to actually do it, it's like click, click, bang, bang.
That's right. And that was our intent. And I think, Laura, you did a great job with, you know, reminding people that this is not information that's flowing in automatically from Auctria in real time to Little Green Light. This is controlled information where the information that you need most is being imported in, and is being imported in after the event ends, so that you can start to do that kind of stewardship plan that we're going to talk about next. So any questions about that? Or
no, I don't see any questions in the chat yet. So I think either we've answered everything, or they're mesmerized.
Oh, okay. I see a few, but I wonder if maybe not seeing them. Well, we'll go back to that in a minute. Let's talk a little bit about this stewardship plan, and then we can go back to that questions area. Remember, we're a little funny here with our GoToWebinar platform. We always have to look at the questions box. Here, as presenters, we see a chat function, but it doesn't really work like a Zoom chat does. So we have to remember to look at in both places. So let's talk a little bit about, okay, now we know we've got some great data that we've collected from our event using Auctria. We've learned how to get that information out of Auctria, and we've learned how it is that it gets into Little Green Light with that integration. So let's talk a little bit about kind of quickly, what kinds of things could you potentially do with that information? And we've been talking about having kind of a plan for your follow-up before your event ends. This is a little cheat sheet about some things that you can consider adding in your stewardship plan after your events. So we really believe that a post-event communication plan is really key to converting your event attendees to donors. And if they already are donors, it's a really great way to continue building that relationship. So as Lori has said to us, the things that you really want to be thinking about in these communications is sharing the results of the event, how it went, how that support has benefited the cause and the mission of your organization. Give them some key stats and some concrete examples of what happened and how it benefited the people that you serve. And then, of course, as Lori always reminds us, remember that the donors and our sponsors, all the supporters, the attendees, let them know that they were appreciated, that what they did helped make your event successful. So those are some of the goals of the communications. If you want a quick and easy kind of 3-month stewardship plan where we're doing these touch points without asking yet for another gift, this kind of gives you some ideas. So hopefully, as people have given you a gift or have made a donation, that you are sending thank yous as you're receiving those automatically. So these are really touch points that you want to do after the event ends. So 2 weeks after the event, maybe you can think about doing some kind of personalized thank you. And we always feel like whenever you can do a segmented approach to those thank yous, the more personal they can be. So, meaning, don't send a thank you to everybody, that regardless of how it is they participated, but actually break it down. So send a specific thank you to people who attended the event. Send a different thank you to people who sponsored the event. Maybe you send a specific thank you to people who made purchases. Maybe it's over a certain amount. Maybe you thank people who have brought a table of people instead of just themselves and their significant other. So you can really segment your approach with those thank yous in many different ways. And the level of personalization can also be aligned to the importance that you might allocate to those different segments. So that's something to keep in mind. Maybe it's everybody gets a personally signed email that is personalized, of course, with their name and the specific donation or contribution they gave. But maybe those that have spent over $1,000 or more get a different approach. Maybe it's your CEO and president or executive director who is not only signing the note, but also making a phone call and letting them know how important their support was. So you can kind of really decide what makes the most sense. 6 weeks after the event, those personal phone calls to top supporters is really a great way to just make sure that those VIPs really understand how important their contributions were. Whenever we do a thankathon event at organizations I've been at, people are always surprised that they're just getting a call to be thanked. They're always waiting to find out how much we're going to ask them to give again. And oftentimes we'll get ready to hang up and they'll say, but wait, aren't you going to ask me for a gift? So I love hearing those stories because it just really gives us an opportunity to say, no, we're just really calling to tell you how appreciative we are and how your support has made a difference in the lives of the people we serve. And then 3 months after the event, you don't have to thank them again for their gift. You've done that successfully, but maybe it's time to talk a little bit about how it is a gift has impacted a specific person at your organization or program that you're offering. Again, this is just a way to keep people engaged and help them to really understand, 1, your appreciation, but 2, how it is their participation really was impactful for the people that they care about as well, and the people that you're serving. So just a quick little idea of 3 ways that you can do that over a 3-month period. The other thing is, we talked about this at the very beginning, but always make sure that you add your event attendees to your newsletter list, whether you send a physical mailed newsletter or an e-newsletter. Definitely make sure that you keep them engaged and informed about what's going on at your organization over the year. Give them an opportunity to learn more about you and ensure that when it is time, potentially request support, you have been communicating with them before you're asked. And then, of course, we do want to at some point ask them, so maybe putting them on your year-end solicitation list makes sense. And then, of course, make sure you invite them to your next event, whether it's next year or next month, whatever it is. Be sure to let them know that you would love to have them back. So that is a little bit about the kinds of things that you can do to steward your donors. So I'm just gonna pass this off to Lori so she can talk a little bit about Auctria again for a minute and how you can learn more if you'd like. And go ahead, Laura. You want to talk a little bit about
just for a quick second? If you're new to Auctria and you want to learn more about it, we do demos twice a week. We will teach you how to plan, run, and close your event. We'll show you how to use the technology, and then we're never far behind either. You can always click our chat button and chat with our support team. We do weekly welcome calls, and we're there to support you with all sorts of resources. Sometimes Timi even comes to us for a webinar. I have a lot of people that come to us, whether they're experts or whether we're doing something with Auctria.
Absolutely. Yeah. Awesome. So that's great. You can also learn a little bit about Little Green Light, and we'll talk a little bit about that. But Lori, this was a great idea. So Lori wanted to share with you the next couple of conferences that she and I will actually be at, representing both Little Green Light and, in her case, Auctria. And wanted to let you know, but hopefully, if you're at either of these events, we'd love to hear it. So send us a message and let us know. And if there are other events that you're going to this year that you think might be fun to hear more from either Auctria or Little Green Light, we'd love for you to tell us about them. Because it's always fun to get a chance to interact with you all outside of these webinars as well. Great. And then, so a little bit more about how it is you can get in touch with Auctria. And this information also is available in the email that we'll send to you at the end of the session with the recording. So if you need or want to get in touch with Lori, you can get her at hello@auctria.com. And then for those of you that are not using Little Green Light yet, or would like to learn more about Little Green Light, we too offer weekly demos online. There's also a recorded version if you prefer, that's available on our website at littlegreenlight.com/demo. Every account at Little Green Light starts with its first 30 days for free. You can sign up for that free account risk-free, no credit cards required to do that. If you sign up for that free account, you can actually use Auctria's referral code. They are one of our partners, affiliate partners, and that means that you would get $200 off of your first year's subscription. So we offer monthly subscription plans that start at $45 a month. Every feature is included. As we talked about, you can see that you can import data into LGL, not just from Auctria, but all different sources. And then all our support and training is included as well. So if you'd like to stay in touch with Little Green Light, be sure to subscribe for our fundraising tips and info about updates and things that are coming new to Little Green Light. And you can do that right there on our blog at littlegreenlight.com. So that's, I think, the end of our presentation today. So let's make sure that if there were questions that we missed, we had a chance to answer them. Yes. Anything you want to say before I head to questions?
No. Can I drop links in the bottom here? Will people see it if I do that?
Yeah, if you put it in the chat and it says all entire audience, people should be able to see them there.
Okay, because I know you had an article in here and it was on the screen as article, but I wanted to drop it in here so that it was
well, thank you so much.
People could grab that.
Yeah, and this is a PDF file that is available in the handout section. We'll also put this recording into our video library in Little Green Light. That's publicly available, so even if you don't have a Little Green Light account, you'll be able to access it. And I believe Lori said she's also planning to post it on the Auctria site as well. Sure. So we'll have the handouts there too. So Christine was asking about, Christine Whitman was saying, one thing I hope you'll cover is what precautions are in place for keeping LGL data clean when importing Auctria information. So I hope that you got the sense that we were very specific about the kinds of information that we were asking Auctria to put into that export to do exactly that, keep information clean, so that miscellaneous information that's not necessary to maintain in Little Green Light was not included in that transaction export. So I think that you should find that that export really will do a nice job in helping to ensure that your data does stay nice and clean. So she was saying in her case, they have a lot of couples that use one email address or one cell phone to register or bid, which is totally fine. You can, if you're familiar with Little Green Light, you do have the opportunity to review the information that's coming in via the import manually before each and every record does go in, and it'll tell you if it matches to an existing constituent record in Little Green Light or it's creating a new one. So if there needs to be an opportunity to change which constituent that information is going to, you can do that through that manual review process. But if you have more questions about that, Christine, definitely that's a great question to pose of our LGL support team, and they could help you on that. Lena was saying it's watt.com. Must have been that that image that you put up, Lori, earlier.
I'm having trouble seeing the chat. I'm sorry. I see the
Okay,
red
yeah,
bar.
they're
Can you
just the
repeat the
questions
question for me?
area. So Lena Casa was saying it's Watt, W-A-T-T, hyphen com, not wait hyphen com. So I'm not sure
Ah,
what she was talking there. Yeah.
okay. It's what.com, not wait.com.
So
Okay.
Nicole, so I was wondering a little bit about this being a sales call versus an actual education call. So, we try to do a little balance of both because we know that we're getting people who are new to both systems, and we want to make sure that you're aware of what each system does so that you can decide one if one makes a sense, the good fit. But we also try to balance that with educational content. So we hope you found that to be helpful. I know you asked, does the integration of the Auctria system and Little Green Light also be able to include and integrate and use class codes that will transfer over into QuickBooks? I don't, Laura, you might know this better than me, but when you're pushing over data from Auctria in Auctria, is it possible to use class codes to identify types of donations?
You can use the LGL reports in any way because it's basically downloading a CSV file, an Excel file that it just has data. So you're just basically pulling out the data. We've specifically pruned it so that it's like the prior question
Yeah,
person had asked, that it's relevant and worthwhile.
right.
A lot of organizations will use the reference code and use that as a class code. If you pop that over to a support team, I think they might have a user guide page for you on that. It would take some setup on the front end to make sure that you're using those reference codes the way you want it to. But we are not integrated with QuickBooks or QuickBooks Online.
Okay.
But you
So
can grab the data
LGL,
that you want and upload it.
right. Yeah. So I think LGL is connected to QuickBooks if they've integrated those two. I think her question was, are those class codes being captured in Auctria and are they part of the export? And it sounds like you call them
No,
reference codes and they're not really part of that transaction export at this time.
correct. Thank you for clarifying.
No, that's okay. I know it was a little, yeah, it's always hard when you're looking at a question versus trying to extrapolate. Angel Anderson is saying, if you've already entered ticket purchases and pre-donations, does this duplicate when that is pulled over? So Angel, I think the answer to that was kind of what we chatted about, which is that our recommendation is that you don't bring the information over as the event information is populating in Auctria, but that you actually wait until the event is over and then move it over. So you shouldn't have that issue. Is that how you're reading that as well, Lori?
Yes, I would definitely wait till everything settles down. Then you won't have to worry about any sort of dupes or anything along those lines.
So Beth is asking this question, and I think this is the case, but please tell me, maybe the import template negates this need, but Beth Parker is saying, for 2 years, I have imported from Auctria to LGL. It would be helpful if the reference fields using the LGL data dictionary between the two platforms were formatted the same way. I think that's exactly the reason why we created this import template, because that's exactly what happens. Is that right?
Yes.
Yes. Great.
Bingo.
I didn't want to speak. The names in the Auctria file are Auctria names, but if you utilize the import template, the pre-built template that we created as part of this integration, you don't have to worry about doing the mapping of data because the import template does it for you.
I concur.
Yes. Okay, good. Excellent. Scout is saying, how do you use this if you're continually importing data from Auctria? Our concern is transaction being double reported. So again, I think just our recommendation is that you don't continually import data, that you only import after the event is over. And that way you won't have any issues regarding double entry or double reported of transactional data. Would you agree with that as well?
Yes, yes, I concur again.
Good, awesome. Nicole Malcolm is back. Thank you, Nicole. She's got some great questions. Can we fix it so that when it puts information into LGL from Auctria, we can separate out a payment from a guest who purchased different items, but need to be logged into LGL separately for class coding? So I think if I'm understanding your question, Nicole, that transaction report does pull out each payment that a guest gives in Auctria. Do they do that for purchasing of items as well? Or, I mean, I would assume that they've checked out and it's all one amount.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, when they check out, it's all one amount because they're just paying for it. But the transaction report does give you that detailed breakdown.
Okay, great. Yes. So, right. So I think what Lori had suggested initially, Nicole, was once you do this export that Auctria has provided, the transaction export, you can review it and add additional information in. So you could do the coding that you would like to have. The only thing you would need to do is you would certainly still be able to use the pre-built template in LGL to import it, except those new columns that you added to your spreadsheet won't be mapped, so you'll have to manually map those in LGL just to make sure that it goes to the correct gift coding mechanism in LGL. But yeah, that's certainly possible. Great. And then Nicole's last, oh no, sorry, no, she's got a couple of questions. I'm glad. If we're doing uploading things into LGL from Auctria, should we wait until after everything is paid? Yes, yes. So we would definitely wait. Would you agree with that? Wait until everything's paid?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
We always say after the event is over, but I know that sometimes it takes a little bit longer, sometimes for payments to come through. But yes, I think that's really what I mean when I say the event is over. I don't mean like,
over.
Last night and tomorrow you do that export. You might need to wait to get some data.
You can exclude people. There is, if you recall, on the page, there is a little checkbox that says exclude anybody that still has an outstanding payment. If you're desperate to get it in there and you want to exclude those people, you can. But it's not that time sensitive. You're not needing to send them anything immediately. Any sort of the transaction or payment records or statements, you can all do all that through Auctria. So you want to make sure that you pump the brakes, you clear your mind, you're focused on your data at that time, and then upload everything. It's not time critical that it needs to be done X amount of hours after the event closes.
Perfect. Okay, Catherine Swanson wanted to know about attendees who attend multiple years. Will LGL be able to add information to existing records? So yes, that's one of the great features of LGL's Flex Importer, is that if the constituent is found in little green light and is matched to an existing record, then this new information that's coming in will attach to that existing record. Eliza Sandals asks, what other customer data can sync from Auctria other than basic name, company, ticket buyers, sponsors, levels, in-kind donations, all of that? Yes. So in a previous slide, I think we had a list of the types of things that you can bring in from Auctria. But yes, all of that data is included in the transaction report.
Right. And if for some reason you want something else, and not necessarily to put it in little green light, but just so that you can discuss it amongst your board or amongst your auction committee, there are hundreds of pre-built templates within the Auctria platform. And then within those templates, you can include and exclude additional fields. So if you just want stuff to kind of peruse amongst your team and kind of strategize for communications or for your next event, you can do that without dirtying up your little green light data.
Right. Good. And Alyssa has actually got a great question. Alyssa Watkins is saying, if someone enters information into Auctria incorrectly, misspelled names or using lowercase throughout, or all caps maybe, and that person is already a constituent in LGL, will the Auctria info overwrite the LGL info? So no, we didn't address this specifically. Again, the Flex importer has some capabilities that will assist with some of this, but I would mention this one key thing. When you are importing data from a spreadsheet into Little Green Light from anywhere, my high recommendation is to always eyeball that before you actually push it into a system. Any kind of automation is going to take the information you have and bring it in as it's presented. It's just kind of how this functionality works. So if you've noticed that there's a bunch of people who did all uppercase, and you don't want uppercase in your LGL database, you probably want to fix that before it goes in. You're not going to catch all that way, and that's okay, because as I said, LGL's importer tool does have some options, one of them actually being not to update the constituent name info, so you can check the box, and so it won't update or overwrite information that you have in LGL about that constituent. The other thing is that it does need to find a match, so the first and last name have to match in order for it to append an existing record. So if it's a misspelled name, for instance, it's not going to find a match to the correct name. You could do an automatic, a manual review to take a peek at whether or not that is meant to be, instead of maybe it was Mary Jones and they wrote Mary Bones, and you knew it was Mary Jones, you could actually manually connect them before the import completes. Again, it does take some time for you to review it, and you can do some manual adjustments if you need to, and you can choose it not to overwrite a name in particular if you use that option in the Flex importer.
Sounds like you guys have bumped into those situations before, Timi.
Personally and professionally, yeah.
Yes, both.
Yeah, I think, whenever you're importing in data that someone has had the ability to hand enter, there's going to be mistakes, and everybody has different kind of styling and formatting desires, especially when you're pulling in information from a form, whatever that form
right
it can cause those issues. So it's always good to take a look at them. So
it is, and the fact that you have the ability to do that work in advance makes it easier to manage that process.
Awesome. I know I'm realizing that I still have quite a few questions here left in our questions view, but I also recognize that we are actually 10 minutes past our time that we said we would be here. So Lori, I want to be sensitive to you, and of course all of you that are with us. I'm happy to stay on and continue to review these questions, or we can send out responses or ask you to contact us for further details, whichever you think. Lori, what makes the most sense for you?
I'm fine to stay on. If the person that asked the question is still here, I'm happy to answer.
Yeah, that is hard to tell without cross-referencing the check. So
do you want to do a rapid answer session here, just to briefly answer it, and then if they need any additional info, they can email us?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Actually, so Shandy Harrell is asking about the knowledge base article that I referenced about how to upload in the Flex importer. So that is in this deck. So if you download it, Shandy, you should be able to get that. And I have a question here from Shayla Byrne about being a third-party fundraiser to get those stories of impact. What's your recommendation? Oh, I think we probably don't have time to talk about that in this session, but feel free to reach out to us and we can maybe give you some ideas. Our blog is also a really great place to get some ideas, and I know also that Sandy Reese, who I mentioned from Get Fully Funded, has loads of information that could be beneficial there. I'm sorry if I'm saying your name wrong, Sheila. I think it's Sheila, but it's spelled really interestingly. She said her experience with Auctria is that they're very responsive and always ready to help. So I figured you'd like to hear that, Lori.
That's
And
beautiful.
Christine says both of the companies have excellent support. Thank you so much. Christina Critch says, thank you for the integration. As I sit here manually transferring data from our upcoming gala, this is going to make my life so much easier. Yes.
Excellent.
Oh, so Watcom. Got it. That it's just how it's pronounced. That's what Rachel was trying to tell us. Okay, we gotcha. Thank you. Lena got it. All right. Thank you, Lena. Yeah, so Zachary is asking Zachariah is asking the same thing, I think, about coding gifts. So I think we've answered that.
Okay.
Yes, and Christine was saying don't put anything about the event in LGL from Auctria into LGL until after the event ends. Doesn't mean you can't create the event in LGL, but you don't want to keep data in both places ongoingly. If the information you are using or are capturing in Auctria, let it stay in Auctria first. Zachariah is asking a question. She's says, I'm confused on how you are listing the dollar when a constituent covers credit card fees. We typically have treated that as a donation to us, but it seems to be broken out as a non-deductible item in Auctria. Do you have any sense about that? And I think that's the last question, believe it or not. So I don't know, Lori, if you know your philosophy around how you break out those credit card when a constituent covers the credit card fees, how you code them.
I don't know the answer to that, to be honest with you. I've seen people ask us to go both ways on it, and I don't know which way we landed on it. I don't know. If you would pop that over to hello at Auctria, they can look up how that's coded internally in our system. And I know people will fight about that from back and forth. We want it this way, we want it that way. And yeah. I don't know how that's coded right now. I'm sorry. Yeah. And I don't want to give you bad information.
Yeah. Nope, that totally makes sense. I would say from the LGL perspective, if you were putting, if somebody had given $200 and they check the box that they want to add 3% to cover the transaction fee, LGL would suggest that the gift amount be reflected of the total amount they paid.
The 200 plus.
So no, $200 plus the 3% that they added to their gift to cover the fees, because you're still wanting to thank the donor for their entire contribution.
Right. I know people fight about it over whether or not it should be considered, because is that tax deductible because it's a fee?
Right. So that's a different thing, right? I was talking about really recognize the donor for the amount they gave, but a tax deduction amount, that's a great thing, honestly, to ask your tax attorney or your accountant, because I think you want to make sure that you're really following the letter of the law for your area.
I would concur in suggesting that as well.
Awesome. Well, I want to thank you all for being with us and sticking around for these last few questions. I hope that you found the presentation to be beneficial. I know it's always a pleasure to be able to work with you, Lori, and have an opportunity to share how our two systems can benefit nonprofits. So thank you so much for being a part of today's presentation. And we look forward to sending this information out to you. And if you have questions, again, for Auctria, you can reach them at hello@auctria.com, and you can reach us at info@thogreenlight.com if you have questions about LGL or any of the things we talked about here today.
Wonderful. Thank you for having me. I always wish people bids that soar. I hope they crush the fundraising goals.
Awesome. Thanks so much. Take care, everyone.
Bye-bye.